Bulldogs. Here we go. Let's bring in Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Morning, Karl. You know the Georgia Bulldogs.
Morning.
Listen, Democratic strategist to Fox News Digital, a warning to the Harris polling and the media silence says this: if the polling errors are anywhere close to what they were in 2016 and 2020, then Trump is in the lead right now. The idea that Harris doesn't have to specify policy or go before the news media is a strategy born of conceit and foolhardiness and will ultimately backfire. Julian Epstein, what do you make of that?
Let's put this in perspective. On this day in 2020, Joe Biden was up 7.1% above Donald Trump in the Real Clear Politics average. And at this point in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up 6.3. And as you remember, the election came down to a handful of votes in a handful of states. And today, in the Real Clear Politics average, Harris is up over Trump by 1.5 in the RCP average and 3.5 in the 538.com.
Trump is in the lead right now. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of Julian Epstein, a top Democrat strategist and a strategist who advises the Harris campaign. Now, what he was referring to was the fact that polls in 2020 and 2016 all underestimated President Trump's support. He outperformed all of those polls, and that's exactly what Karl Rove was pointing out. And that's why Julian Epstein is warning Democrats. The longer Kamala Harris waits to speak with the media, to give an interview, to reveal her policies and actual policies that she's not plagiarizing and stealing from Donald Trump, the more danger and the more risk it is for her. Because think of it this way. Let's say Kamala Harris gave an interview in early August, and let's say that interview was a train wreck. It crashed and burned. Well, she would have had the rest of August, she would have had the DNC and all of September and all of October to reshape and change the narrative, to get her bearings, get the ground under her feet. But the longer she waits, the more pressure will be on her to perform. And as we all know, Kamala Harris does not perform well under pressure. So she'll have even less time to correct course if that interview goes off the rails. And it's a very high risk, obviously high risk, high reward strategy, but very high risk strategy for Kamala Harris. And the same concept, the same idea applies to the presidential debate. So much is hinging on that September 10th debate with ABC. If she crashes and burns, she's not going to have a lot of time to change the narrative and to make a comeback and reintroduce herself to the American public. Now, again, what both Karl Rove and Julian Epstein were talking about are the polls underestimating Donald Trump. So in 2016, on this day in 2016, Clinton was ahead 6.3 points nationally. Joe Biden was ahead 7.1 points nationally. Right now, Harris has only had 1.5. Of course, we don't elect our presidents based on the national vote, but the Electoral College does favor Republicans, and again, you know, Clinton was ahead by so much, and she still lost in 2016. Biden was ahead by even more, yet he narrowly, quote-unquote, won. So when we take a look at the swing states below that, Pennsylvania, Trump is ahead, and again, the polls underestimate him, anywhere 4 to 8 points. So if he's ahead by 0.2, that's a great news for Trump, especially keeping in mind that Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016 and Clinton was ahead 9.2. So great news there. Personally, I think Trump is ahead in Michigan, but I'm just going to stick with the numbers, stick with the publicly available polls. But all the numbers show Trump winning Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada. I mean, this is great news for the Trump campaign. And again, if I want to level with y'all, I'm not... I'm not trying to create false confidence, but we take a look at this electoral map. Again, from Real Clear Politics, they're not reading anything into the polls at all. They're just taking the polls at their number. And if you just average the polls and color the states blue or red based on what the numbers are saying, if the election were held today, Trump advanced 287, Harris Walz 251. So again, if I were a candidate, if I had to be in any one of their shoes, I would rather be in Trump's shoes. Just to level with y'all, again, that's just based on the numbers. If I had to do, and I will do another poll analysis, electoral map video with my own spin and my own interpretation of the numbers, but I'll save that for another video. But I would actually be even more aggressive than that map. Even CNN's Jake Tapper took a look at the blue wall states in Michigan and Wisconsin, Harris is maybe up a point or two. And keep in mind, again, the polls underestimated Trump anywhere from 4 to 8 points in 2020 and 2016. In Pennsylvania, she may be down a couple of points. The sources I spoke to said she's doing better than Biden was, though in PA, she has lost ground with white men. So again, Jake Tapper, CNN, not exactly friendly to Trump, so not good news at all. The National Pulse also confirms this. They ran the numbers. No DNC bump for Kamala, Trump back in the lead, and that headline was based on the latest poll that came out today, which showed Trump ahead in the national vote, which again, the national vote doesn't matter, but the Electoral College does favor Republicans. So if a Republican, in this case Donald Trump, is ahead in the national popular vote, it should theoretically turn into a landslide in the Electoral College. Of course, none of this means we can sit back and relax. We have to do the work. We have to keep campaigning. We have to keep spreading true information, and we have to fact check the liberals all the way up to Election Day and far beyond. But again, if I had to choose whose shoes I would be in, I would much rather be in Trump's. And part of that is because of the endorsements that are beginning to come Trump's way. Because think of it this way. During the DNC, there were a lot of Republicans who spoke on stage and they talked about how Trump is a monster, Trump is evil, and now they're no longer voting for Trump. Well, Trump is now unveiling his own version of that, and he's doing it with higher profile Democrats. First, it was RFK Jr., and RFK Jr. actually hinted that there were going to be more Democrats coming forward in the next few days and next few weeks endorsing Trump. So this is perfect timing because the DNC just happened. Trump totally undercut their momentum. He popped the balloon, so to speak, with the RFK Jr. endorsement. And now there's going to be even more. Here's what RFK Jr. had to say about it.
Campaigning actively, I think President Trump is going to make a series of announcements about other Democrats who are joining his campaign, and I want to make America healthy again, and so does President Trump. So those are objectives. The Wall Street Journal may be worried about shareholder value for pharmaceutical companies, and I think I talk specifically President Trump about that issue, and he said that he wanted to leave as his legacy healthy children, and that that he was unconcerned about the other implications.
In addition to the polls showing that RFK Jr. supporters are breaking about 2-1 for Trump over Kamala Harris, we also know that the RFK Jr. endorsement was a big deal based on how the media reacted. They all were attacking him after they've ignored him and basically blacklisted him over the last year. So if RFK Jr. was of no consequence, if his endorsement had just absolutely no impact on the race, the media would have totally ignored it, because by covering it, the media is giving exposure to it, right? They're giving more wind and momentum behind it. They're giving it airtime. But the fact that they're covering it really proves that they know that this could be a fatal blow for Kamala Harris's campaign. Now, I recently saw this political cartoon that I just wanted to share. Right here at the very top, you see the Democrats pushing away Elon Musk to Donald Trump. And then you see the Democrats pushing away Tulsi Gabbard to Donald Trump. Then you see the Democrats pushing away RFK Jr. to Trump. And then all of a sudden, it's Trump and his coalition outnumbering the Democrats, and the donkey is screaming, "Why are you guys helping Trump?" And I think this is the perfect analogy for what's happening today, because Democrats basically have this purity litmus test. If you are not as radical as we are, if you are not as woke as we are, then you're not welcome in our club. They push you off. And that's exactly what happened. And I think right now Trump is just realizing the power of his coalition. Essentially, the rest, it's the Democrats and their cult, which is ironic because the Democrats call us a cult, but they're the ones who are a cult. And they push out anyone who doesn't agree with them 100%. And what Trump has done is he's realizing, well, I can build a coalition of all of these people who no longer have a home in the Democrat Party. RFK Jr. and his supporters who no longer have a home in the Democrat Party. Come on in. Come to the tent. Same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. Come to the tent. Same thing with Elon Musk. I mean, I think this coalition is going to continue to grow. We saw Tulsi Gabbard just endorsed President Trump yesterday. So it'll be interesting what other Democrats start coming out and endorsing Trump, especially as we get closer to Election Day. This is awful news for Kamala Harris, and I'm sure their campaign is probably reeling in shock, and they're looking at these poll numbers realizing, oh no, we may have messed up. We may have made a mistake by hiding Kamala Harris from the press, by refusing to release any policy details, especially as Trump's coalition grows larger. Here's a bit of the moment yesterday when Tulsi Gabbard endorsed Trump.
To the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before. This is one of the main reasons why I'm committed to doing all that I can to send President Trump back to the White House, where he can once again serve us as our commander-in-chief. Because I am confident that his first task will be to do the work to walk us back from the brink of war. We cannot be prosperous unless we are at peace. And we can't live free as long as we have a government that is retaliating against its.
So we've been talking a lot comparing the Harris-Biden administration to the Trump administration. When it comes to the economy, obviously we've been talking a lot about inflation, the cost of living, wages going down, employment. A lot of the comparisons have been on the economy. But what Tulsi did there was brilliant because she reminded people that under President Trump, we actually had world peace. Look, when I was a kid and growing up, one of the jokes, right, you would watch the beauty pageants and these beautiful women would go on stage, they would do their talent, and there was always the swimsuit, and then there was the interview portion, right? And the interview portion, one of the cliches that would be like, what do you want? The question would be like, what's the most important thing to you? What do you want? And the cliche answer that all of these women in the pageants would be like, world peace, world peace, world peace. I mean, they just said it was just kind of a canned answer. And I think we all forget that under Trump, we actually had world peace. No new wars. We were on the brink of pulling out of Afghanistan, which Joe Biden botched. There was peace in the Middle East. Israel was safe. Nothing was happening with Russia, Ukraine. China was just keeping to itself. I mean, we truly had world peace. And then you look at what's happening today. In just 3.5 years under a Harris-Biden administration. I mean, the world is like a vacuum in that, like, when there is no leader, that vacuum needs to be filled. Someone is going to come in and take that shape. And Biden has really relinquished the role as the world's dominant superpower for the United States. And that's when he disastrously withdrew from Afghanistan. It emboldened Russia. It emboldened and is emboldening China right now. And I know Democrats are going to say, well, the Afghanistan negotiation, that was agreed to under Trump. Well, it was Joe Biden who executed it. He had, it happened in August. He had 8 months to change plans. He had 8 months to, you can't tell me that he was president and he just for 8 months stuck with the exact same plan Trump developed over a year prior. I mean, facts and events on the ground change. So your plan has to change. And that includes your withdrawal plan. It was Biden who botched it, not President Trump. So it's funny that Democrats tried to blame this on Trump. Now, the reason they tried to blame it on Trump is really ironic because Kamala Harris has been stealing all of her policy ideas from Trump. First, she stole the idea of no taxes on tips for service industry workers. Then she stole the idea of increasing the child tax credits for families. And then just yesterday, J.D. Vance called her out on it. I thought this was brilliant. Take a look at this moment.
But I read a story this morning that her advisors are considering just copying all of Donald Trump's policies. They're more popular. In fact, I've heard that for her debate in just a couple of weeks, she's going to put on a Navy suit, a long red tie, and adopt the slogan, "Make America Great Again." I think that's what...
Okay, so earlier in the video, I made reference to how I thought this map by Real Clear Politics actually is a little too conservative. And the reason I think that, so for example, take a look at Michigan. They're saying that Michigan is going to go to Harris Walls. Again, Polls are just a snapshot in time, right? This is just assuming the election were held today. There's plenty of room, plenty of time for the numbers to change up until election day. But part of the reason, not only should you consider who does the poll, who sponsored the poll, who the demographics of the poll are, you should also take a look at the other questions they ask. Because every question on policy, who do you trust on the economy more? More people, the majority of people, 50 plus 1% of people, trust Donald Trump. Who do you trust on foreign affairs more? Trump. You can go down the list of specific policy issues, and on every single one, there's only one issue where voters chose Kamala Harris. That was abortion. But on the rest of them, the economy, the border, foreign affairs, the national debt, all of that, all of those issues go for President Trump. So that's one of the reasons why I'm really bullish for Trump. Again, just my opinion, just my analysis when it comes to these polls, because I just don't see how the pollsters can ask people these questions and then on virtually every single issue other than abortion, they say we trust Trump more. Then all of a sudden they're going to say they're voting for Kamala Harris. I think the closer the election gets, don't be surprised if these polls start coming closer together and if Trump starts gaining the lead in some of them. One of the great things we should be thankful about is Mark Zuckerberg is apparently sitting this election out. Now, I have a lot of theories about that, maybe, and this could be a good thing if you support President Trump. My theory is that maybe Mark Zuckerberg is sitting it out because he thinks Donald Trump is going to win and he wants to stay on Trump's good side. I don't know, but Mark Zuckerberg did write this letter to the Honorable Jim Jordan. In it, he writes, in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. So essentially, this is Mark Zuckerberg in writing, confirming that the Biden regime forced them or pressured them to censor Americans, to violate our First Amendment rights, to violate freedom of speech. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take content down, and we own our decisions. So at least Mark Zuckerberg is taking responsibility for this. But he admits in this same paragraph that he believes that the government pressure was not only wrong, but strong, and was essentially the reason they made these decisions. And in this last paragraph, in a separate situation, the FBI warned us about potential Russian disinformation. And so, again, this goes back to the fact that big tech, and not just Facebook, but Twitter was probably the most egregious, and then Google really worked to bury the Hunter Biden laptop story, which raised a lot of questions about whether or not Joe Biden was compromised, whether or not foreign entities and other countries could blackmail Biden or force him to do their bidding because of whatever dirt they had on him. Fortunately, Mark Zuckerberg in the last sentence admits, we've changed our policies and processes to make sure this doesn't happen again. For instance, we no longer temporarily demote things in the US while waiting for fact checkers. So that is, we can't go backwards. We can't change what happened in the past. We can't change all the missteps that Facebook, Twitter, Google, big tech did in 2020. But at least they've righted the wrongs, and they're not doing the same thing again this election cycle. And for those of you worried about Zuckerbucks and all of the other ways Mark Zuckerberg was involved in the 2020 election, apart from content moderation, I want to address the contributions I made during the last presidential cycle to support electoral infrastructure. And so, again, you can pause this, you can read it to read the whole pause this to read the whole paragraph. But to go down to the last two sentences of this paragraph, my goal is to be neutral and not play a role one way or another, or even to appear to be playing a role. So I don't plan on making a similar contribution this cycle. So essentially, it sounds like Mark Zuckerberg's completely sitting this one out, or at least that's what he's claiming. And assuming he is telling the truth, that is a very good thing for our constitutional republic and for I think just the fairness of information and voters to freely make their own decisions. Of course, though, it's hard for voters to make their own decisions when they are completely and constantly being gaslit, not just by the media, but by Democrat leaders. Take a look at what Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is a top surrogate for the Harris campaign, said on CNN. And what he said was so outrageous that just when he's talking, take a look at the CNN host's face, and you'll see her face kind of like, it twitches when she's like, "You're kidding, right?"
You know, this is a guy, Donald Trump, who sits around all day watching Fox News and doesn't actually do much. He hasn't done many of these events, you know, these major addresses over the course of his campaign. And it's only now that it appears that he's either even or behind that he now is complaining he's got to go out and do some work. And he's basically saying Kamala Harris needs to do more. The truth is that she's answered questions along the way. You've seen her do that when she's getting on and off of Air Force Two or helicopter or moving from one place to
She's answered questions along the way. Yeah, she's answered questions that like someone running for elementary school president would ask and answer. Like, she has not been faced with any tough questions. I don't know if you saw this. I think it was either NBC or CBS. I can't remember. But after the DNC, after Kamala Harris gave her acceptance speech, she was walking backstage in the arena, and a reporter asked her how she felt. They could have asked her anything. They could have asked policy specifics. They could have asked about what's next. They could have asked, how she's preparing for the debate. They could have asked anything serious, and it was, how do you feel? How are you taking in this moment? And then the reporter congratulated both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. So a complete joke from the media, complete dereliction of duty, and that governor just completely gaslighting the public. Kamala Harris hasn't answered any serious questions, and we all know that Trump goes around the country with these huge rallies. So it's not even close. It's not even comparable. But that's what we get with the mainstream media. Someone put together this compilation video of CBS. So it's the same anchor on CBS and then obviously the same network. Take a look at how they talked about Trump pitching his idea of no tax on service workers, on their tips, and then take a second look at how they introduced Kamala Harris introducing this idea. When you see these clips back to back, the bias is undeniable.
That's the kind of money overall that funds Social Security, Medicare, and other social safety net programs, so they'd take a hit. It's believed if it were to be enacted the way Trump is proposing it, it'd be about a $250 billion hit to federal revenue over the next decade. So the Culinary Workers Union, for example, that organizes a lot of them, says this Trump idea is unrealistic, that they think that their members are smart enough to know the difference between, as they said, real solutions and wild campaign promises from a convicted felon. The Biden campaign kind of scoffs at this idea as well. But it is potentially good politics to at least demonstrate this. Democrats would also turn around and say, you could have done this during the 4 years you were president.
Well, first of all, that's a dumb argument, because you accomplish as much as you can in your first 4 years, and then you accomplish even more. Trump had a very successful first term. Look at all he did with the Supreme Court, all he did with the border, all he did with world peace, all he did with the economy, the list goes on and on and on. He did accomplish a lot, and he's saying, I accomplished that, and I will accomplish more. So that's why he didn't do it in the first 4 years. He's going to do even more in the next 4 years. Also, notice how he got in a job about the convicted felon, and he totally misrepresents the point of income taxes, because his base assumption is that the government is entitled to your money, which is not the truth. If you take a look at the history of the income tax, the federal income tax, did not exist when the nation was founded. This was something that happened through our nation's history. It was first enacted to help pay for the Civil War. Then it was in the 20th century when it became a more permanent staple. And now people just accept it as if it's part of the norm. But the reality is when our nation was first founded, there was no federal income tax. And so I don't like his assumption and his argument that, well, if you don't tax service workers, if you don't tax their tips, then all of a sudden we're going to have a problem with our budget and we're going to have a problem with financing the government. Maybe taxes aren't the problem, sir. Maybe the problem is government overspending. Maybe it's wasteful government spending. Ever thought of that? Now, so that's how he introduced the idea when Trump pitched it. Take a look at what they said when Kamala Harris pitched it.
This is actually a great policy debate to see them having, because it speaks to a real dollars and cents concern and an idea that's designed to help save, especially working class people, money. Well, what did Kamala Harris do Saturday night in Las Vegas but say, I support ending taxes on tips? as well as raising the minimum wage. We were out there, for example, in late June, discussing this with waiters and bartenders who said, yeah, on paper, that's a great idea. It would save me. One woman told me that at the height of her bartending career, she was making about $100,000 a year in tips on top of a base salary. To not have to pay taxes on that would save her conceivably $30,000 a year, which she said would be a down payment on a house. Might be able to pay a car payment or pay off student loans for her daughter. So, there's real potential savings there.
Okay, I get a lot of independent and undecided viewers, undecided voters who watch my videos. I hope that, if there's one takeaway, I hope it's that. Anytime you see something negative about Trump or a Republican, don't all just suddenly believe it just because it's the news. And same thing goes for if they're covering a Democrat negatively. Do your own research, because that right there, keep in mind, this policy of no taxes on tips for service industry workers, it's the exact same policy. It's not as though Kamala Harris has some nuance or some asterisk making her policy different from Trump's. It is the exact same policy as Trump's. No difference, literally no difference. And yet there was a night and day difference in how CBS covered it. And that was just one network. Multiply this by ABC, CNN, MSNBC, CBS. Woo, that is media bias in a nutshell. Now, fortunately, media bias doesn't get to everyone. I'm going to end this video by showing you this social media clip that is going viral that just tickled my funny bone. So there's this prankster who is going around putting Harris Walls signs in people's yards, and he's claiming to work for the Harris campaign, and then he films their reaction when he's like, can I leave this political yard sign in your yard? And this was, people on social media, whenever there's a grumpy, angry woman, everyone calls her Karen. I don't know what to call this lady. She's kind of the antithesis of that. She's the opposite of that. For now, I'm just calling her Hero Karen. But if you guys think of a better nickname for her, let me know in the comments down below. But for now, I'm going to call her Hero Karen, and here she is.
Hi. Hello there. Hi, I work for the Harris and Waltz campaign. Take it off. No, I'm going to leave it there, because...
No, you're not going to leave it there.
Oh, why?
Because I can't stand them.
Do you not support tampons in men's bathrooms?
No, I don't support tampons in men's bathrooms.
Why?
Because tampons are for women. Where are they going to stick it? Up the Get it the out of here. Well, get it out of my property.
It looks good there, though. Wait, don't touch my sign. That's my sign.
I don't give a They're a bunch of communists.
You didn't address me by my pronouns.
What are you, a he, she? Transgender is what you are.
I'm two-spirit.
I just thought that was hilarious. I love prank videos like that. I think a lot of times these days prank videos go a little too far, but I think that right there obviously is a harmless prank. He's not damaging any property or scaring anyone. I just love that reaction, and I hope that he posts more of those reactions. It'll be interesting to see if there are more events like that from other Hero Karens. But as always, all of this is just my opinion, just my analysis, and I would love to know yours in the comments below. How are you feeling now after the DNC? We officially have the DNC behind us, and we have our first few rounds of polling coming out. Do you feel more nervous about the election? Are you just coasting? Do you feel confident? Let me know in the comments below. Of course, none of this is meant to make anyone feel overconfident. We all still have to get out and vote. Bring your friends, bring your family with you to vote, knock on doors, volunteer. There is still a lot of fight left, but I'm feeling great, and I feel encouraged. I know it's going to be a slog to get there, but there is hope. If you haven't already, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask, but it really does help me in the algorithm to reach more viewers like you. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.